My fiancé, whom I had been with for 7 years, decided to leave me right when my business was struggling, just 6 months before our wedding. It's worth mentioning that I was overweight. She met me when I was overweight, and I remained that way throughout our relationship. However, she never stopped criticizing my weight and constantly compared me to her previous partners who were in better shape. On the day she left, she brought up how she was never physically attracted to me, and with my business going downhill, she didn't see a future for us. About a month after the breakup, I discovered that she had been cheating on me with one of my regular clients, wealthy, for at least a year. For the next 3-4 months, I went through an intense period of pain and sadness like I had never felt before. But then anger took over, and along with it, a strong desire for revenge. You see, I'm a hands-on kind of person, and I believe that gaining knowledge is crucial to achieving results. So, I embarked on a mission to educate myself as much as possible about fitness and apply it to transform my own body. To cut a long story short, I became completely obsessed with fitness. In just 3 years, I managed to go from weighing 450 pounds with over 55% body fat to a lean 200 pounds with 7% body fat and a solid physique. The remarkable thing is that throughout this entire journey, she had no idea of what I was doing or what I had accomplished. After 3 years, I made the decision to move to a different country. I'd closed down my business and wanted to pursue a better future elsewhere. A few months after settling in the new country, I received a surprising request from a major newspaper back in my home country. They asked me to give an interview for an article about young immigrants. Unbeknownst to me, the photo I provided them with ended up on the cover of the newspaper. Suddenly, I started getting tagged on social media, and people who hadn't seen me in a long time couldn't believe their eyes. The news spread until it reached my ex-partner's ears. It turns out she went and purchased the newspaper, and a mutual friend who happened to be there witnessed her shocked reactions. Her jaw literally dropped to the floor, and she couldn't stop asking how this could be possible and if the photo was real. I later heard from friends that she was complaining to everyone who knew us. By the way, I'm planning to compete in a fitness competition within the next year or so. So yes, I'll be sending her a signed photo, even though I've completely moved on from her. Consider it revenge number 2, currently in progress. Once I settled in the new country, I met a girl and fell deeply in love with her. I hadn't been in a relationship since the previous breakup because I had trust issues and was too focused on my fitness journey to pursue romantic interests. I was introduced to her through a relative, and she seemed perfect to me. It took some reassurance from her to regain my trust in opening up emotionally. Before long, I started envisioning a future with her, and we entered into a committed relationship. However, she wasn't the easiest person to be around. She tended to be judgmental, immature, had OCD tendencies, and possibly had borderline personality disorder. She struggled to express her feelings openly and had unconventional views on relationships, marriage, and having children, whereas I was very much in favor of marriage and starting a family. Her lack of experience in serious relationships made things more challenging. Despite the negative aspects, she had some wonderful qualities that kept me holding on. There were times when she could be incredibly sweet and caring. Anyway, the relationship abruptly ended after 4 years when I proposed to her, and she couldn't bring herself to say yes. Instead of a direct rejection, she proceeded to list all my faults and shortcomings right to my face. At the top of her list was the fact that I was new to the country and hadn't yet established myself, meaning I didn't own a house and didn't have a large bank account. She even went as far as saying that if I were to lose my job, which was a decent corporate job, it would be difficult for me to find another one, and all the responsibilities would fall on her. She rejected me on so many levels, it's hard to find any humor in it. No doubt about it, this breakup was the most excruciating one I've ever been through. It felt like my soul was torn in two, and not having my family and friends around for support made it even worse. It was absolutely brutal. Things got so bad that I started experiencing intense physical pain, lost track of time for months on end, and sank into deep depression. At some point during this living nightmare, I reached my breaking point and underwent a massive and sudden transformation. I completely shed my old self and emerged As a different person, I made a solemn vow to achieve career goals that most people would consider impossible. And through that, I would seek my revenge. A year and a half has passed, and I've made some significant improvements in my life. I've boosted my income significantly, purchased a nice apartment in a good neighborhood, and finally got the car and motorcycle I've always wanted. On top of that, I'm working on building 2 companies, one in consulting and another in the tech industry. The tech company recently received a high valuation, and our goal is to make it a big success. Along the way, I've had the opportunity to meet incredible and successful individuals, and I've formed some great friendships with them. And you know what? I'm not planning on stopping here. I'm fully aware that revenge is a dish best served cold, and I'm not bothered by the fact that it hasn't been fully achieved yet. Aside from all of that, I want to express my immense gratitude towards these 2 women. Despite their rejection and the pain they caused me, they have ultimately made me a better person. Their actions have motivated me to push myself, explore new possibilities, and exceed my own limitations. They've opened my eyes and provided me with the motivation to pursue my dreams. Second story, it's been 5 weeks since the day everything changed for me, and I've been on an emotional roller coaster ever since. My wife and I have been together for 23 years. We're both in our early 60s and were previously married. We got married 5 months after being introduced by one of her sisters. Throughout the years, we've faced a few challenges, but we've stayed strong and overcome them together. Our relationship has only grown stronger over time, and now we're empty nesters who spend a lot of time together and have an active and satisfying bed life. We got married when she was 37 and I was 40, so we both knew about each other's romantic past, and it has never been a problem for us. Throughout our years together, we've occasionally shared stories about our pasts, but it was never forced or necessary for us to ask questions like, "How many people have you been with?" or delve into explicit details about our previous experiences. However, about 2 months ago, something changed, and we started having more casual conversations about our past relationships and partners. My wife, in particular, seemed to have a strong urge to share everything she could remember about her own experiences. I found it all quite fascinating and enjoyable to hear. She had some funny stories to tell, and some of it even sparked my interest. We kept sharing stories for a couple of weeks until one Saturday morning. She was doing her hair at her dressing table while I was lying on the bed talking to her. After finishing a story, she said, "Well, I think I've told you everything about my past. You probably know more about me than anyone, except myself." I could see her reflection in the mirror, and she could see mine. I chuckled and half-jokingly asked, "So you've never cheated on me?" Her expression changed. Her eyes looked away, and she mumbled, "I can't answer that." Then she added, "But I can't lie to you either." What she revealed next shattered my heart and destroyed the sense of security I had built over our 23-year relationship. Her story goes like this. A few months after we got married, she had to travel to Florida for a custody hearing with her ex. She felt incredibly nervous and scared because she had to represent herself in court, while her ex had hired a powerful attorney. The plan was for her to fly down the day before the hearing, spend the night at a motel, attend the hearing early the next day, and then fly back home in the evening. On the day of her trip, she landed in Florida, picked up a rental car, and drove to the motel where she had booked a room. She intentionally chose a motel near a beautiful beach she used to visit when she was still married to her ex. My wife really enjoys strolling along beaches. They bring her a sense of peace and tranquility. On that particular day, she made a stop at a liquor store on her way to the beach. The upcoming custody hearing had her feeling incredibly anxious, and she thought a little rum might help calm her nerves. She wasn't a complete teetotaler, but also not a heavy drinker. She spent a couple of hours walking on the beach, sipping her rum, and at some point, she realized she was feeling quite buzzed. Then she remembered spotting a cute little diner not far from her motel and decided to go there for a meal. When she walked into the diner, it was nearly empty, so she chose to sit alone in a booth. A little while later, a guy she described as good-looking with gray hair walked into the diner. She guessed he was around 45 years old. He sat in an empty booth across from her, and they exchanged greetings. While they were eating, they started chatting. He came across as a really nice guy, and she found out that he was a professional photographer who loved his job. During their conversation, he asked if he could join her in the booth. She didn't see anything wrong with it. I've told her that I would have been suspicious at that point, but she believed he was harmless and enjoyed having someone pleasant to talk to instead of going straight back to her hotel room and being alone with thoughts about the next day. I should mention that my wife is naturally trusting and tends to see the best in people rather than assuming the worst. I'll spare most of the details, but she ended up sleeping with him. She recalls that they drank a lot of wine. She's not using that as an excuse. And at some point, he started kissing and touching her. At some point, he suggested they take a shower, possibly to sober up both of them because she vaguely remembers being quite drunk and the shower water feeling cool or cold. Once they reached his bed, she says he was too drunk to fully perform, so he couldn't get it in. Whether that's true or not, or whether she's just sparing me that detail, I'll probably never know. However, she has admitted that he was touching her all over, and she did some BJ to him, so she's probably telling the truth. The images in my mind have been torturous. She says that by the time they reached his bedroom, she realized she was doing something very wrong. She thought about backing out, but he became quite aggressive, and she realized she didn't really know him at all, so she decided to just give him what he wanted and get it over with. She says he fell asleep soon after and started snoring loudly. That's when she quietly got off the bed, got dressed, and left the house without waking him up. She says she cried during the drive back to the motel, and when she arrived, she felt dirty, so she spent a long time in the shower trying to clean herself and crying. I've learned that some betrayed spouses prefer not to know the details, while others, like me, feel a strong need to know everything. I've asked countless questions, even though there are some things she doesn't remember due to the passage of time. However, since she first told me about it, she has been completely open to answering any question she can. I understand that many of these questions have been difficult for her to answer, and the answers have been painful for me to hear. And nevertheless, she has fully recognized my need and right to ask them, and has been patient in doing her best to provide answers. She has apologized many times and is committed to rebuilding my trust in our marriage. She admits that, although she doesn't think about that incident often anymore, it bothered her greatly for a long time. Whenever it crossed her mind, she wanted to tell me, but was afraid of hurting me. However, when I directly asked her that morning, 5 weeks ago, if she had ever cheated on me, she couldn't lie. She swears that she has never repeated such actions, and I have no reason to doubt her. There haven't been any signs or suspicions of anything happening since then. She has repeatedly taken responsibility for her actions without making excuses. Even though it's been more than 20 years since this happened, it doesn't make the incredible shock, pain, anger, and disappointment I've been feeling any less intense. When she disclosed it to me, it felt as if it had just occurred the night before. She acknowledges that even though she's had over 20 years to come to terms with it, for me, it feels fresh and painful. As I mentioned earlier, the intrusive thoughts have been terrible, although they now occur about 8 or 10 times a day, instead of every 3 minutes like they did initially. I came across an article that mentioned how closeness is often the most challenging part for a man to overcome when his wife cheats on him. I truly believe that the closeness was the main part of my wife's one-night fling. According to her, it wasn't even satisfying for her because the other guy was selfish and focused only on his own pleasure. I just wish she could explain why she did it, but she can't provide a clear answer. If she told me that she was incredibly attracted to him, and since she was far from home and wouldn't see him again, she decided to have a casual encounter, I might understand to some extent. However, she sincerely insists that she had no intention of engaging in closeness with him when she went to his house. She believes alcohol played a significant role, but she emphasizes that she doesn't want to use that as an excuse. She acknowledges that what she did was wrong, regardless of whether she was drunk or not. In a strange way, I consider myself fortunate when I compare my situation to others here. My wife had a one-night fling with a guy who lived 1,200 miles away from us. There was no ongoing affair or emotional connection involved. She never had any further contact with him. She can't provide a clear explanation for her actions, but she doesn't try to make excuses for what happened. She emphasizes that it was a one-time occurrence and not something she did before or has done since. I love her deeply, and I know she feels the same way about me. We have shared 23 years of good memories together, and we are committed to moving forward and working together to build a marriage and relationship that is forever changed but stronger and better than ever before. She constantly tells me how sorry she is and expresses her love for me multiple times a day. I had made up my mind that I wouldn't forgive her unless I genuinely felt forgiveness in my heart, and it took me a couple of weeks after D-Day to sincerely forgive her. I know she is fully aware of how wrong her actions were, and she deeply regrets them. If she had the chance, she would take it all back instantly. I also know that she truly understands the extent of the pain she caused me, and that's something I will never forget. I'm writing this because I don't really have anyone I can talk to about it, but I felt the need to share it with someone. By the way, she managed to overcome the powerful lawyer and won the custody battle.